This is a CBS News special report. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. We're coming on the air as President Biden is set to deliver remarks in the wake of the deadly truck attack this morning in New Orleans. The FBI identified the driver as 42-year-old Shamsud Din Jabbar from Texas. Officials say he drove through barriers and rammed into a crowd on Bourbon Street. Jabbar was killed in a shootout with police. We expect President Biden, who has spent the most of the day huddling with his national security and homeland security advisors, to approach the podium shortly. He's at Camp David, where he went to spend this remaining part of the New Year's weekend. I'm joined here on the table by Nicole Skanga. Nicole, where are we in the terms of this investigation as we await for President Biden to come out and address the country?
Major, well, right now, police, law enforcement, the FBI in the lead of this investigation. They are searching this 42-year-old suspect's home, both in Texas and the Airbnb in which he stayed in New Orleans. In addition to that, continuing to analyze all of the forensic.
Nicole, let me interrupt for President Biden's remarks.
Our hearts are with the people of New Orleans after the despicable attack that occurred in the early morning hours. To all the families of those who are killed, to all those who are injured, to all the people of New Orleans who are grieving today, I want you to know, I grieve with you. Our nation grieves with you. We're going to stand with you as you mourn and as you heal in the weeks to come. I want to thank our brave first responders and law enforcement personnel who stopped the attacker in his tracks before he could kill or injure even more people. And I want to thank you to everyone at the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, including the FBI, for working nonstop to investigate this heinous act. The FBI is leading the investigation to determine what happened, why it happened, and whether there was any continuing threat to public safety. Here's what we know so far. The FBI has reported to me the killer was an American citizen, born in Texas. He served in the United States Army on active duty for many years. He also served in the Army Reserve until a few years ago. The FBI also reported to me that mere hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill, The ISIS flag was found in his vehicle, which he rented to conduct this attack. Possible explosives were found in the vehicle as well, and more explosives were found nearby. The situation is very fluid, and the investigation has a preliminary stage. And the fact is that right now, there you go. The law enforcement and intelligence community are continuing to look for any connections, associations, or co-conspirators. We have nothing additional to report at this time. The investigation is continuing to be active, and no one should jump to conclusions. I've directed my Attorney General, the FBI Director, the Secretary of Homeland Security, the head of the National Counterterrorism Center, and the intelligence community to work on this intensively until we have a full and complete information. And once we have that information, I will share that information as soon as we can confirm it. Additionally, we're tracking the explosion of a cyber truck outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. Law enforcement and the intelligence community are investigating this as well, including whether there's any possible connection with the attack in New Orleans. Thus far, there's nothing to report on that score at this time. I've directed my team to make sure every resource is made available to federal, state, and local law enforcement to complete the investigation in New Orleans quickly and to make sure there's no remaining threat to the American people. And we'll support the people of New Orleans as they begin the hard work of healing. New Orleans is a place unlike any other place in the world. It's a city full of charm and joy. So many people around the world love New Orleans because of its history, its culture, and above all, its people. So I know, while this person committed a terrible assault on the city, the spirit of our New Orleans will never, never, never be defeated. It always will shine forth. We've seen that time and time again throughout its history, and I know we'll see it again in the days and weeks ahead. May God bless the people of New Orleans. May God bless our police and our first responders. May God protect our troops, and we'll keep you fully, contemporaneously informed. Thank you.
Have you spoken to President Trump?
Are you concerned about more attacks?
Have you spoken to President Trump?
Investigated as a terror attack?
From Camp David, President Biden describing the terror attack in New Orleans hours after the strike of New Year's, a despicable attack. Importantly, the president saying, quoting what the FBI told him, that hours before the attack, the assailant, quoting the president here, posted videos saying he was inspired by ISIS. The president also noting an ISIS flag was found on the vehicle involved in this murderous assault on Bourbon Street in the French Quarter of New Orleans. Also, President Biden noting the explosion of a Tesla Cybertruck outside the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas, saying that investigators are probing to see if there's any relationship whatsoever to the terror attack in New Orleans. The president said nothing to report on that score at the moment. Nicole Skanga, continuing our conversation, your impressions from President Biden's remarks and the notation that he made, which I believe is the first from a federal source, that the FBI is now convinced that the assailant posted videos hours before the attack.
Yeah, an indication there that the assailant might have a premeditated intention that was broadcast on social media ahead of this attack. The first indication we've gotten of that, we know that he had a very active YouTube account, and right now FBI and other investigators scouring that digital footprint to determine exactly what was the ideology, how did radicalization unfold in the days and weeks ahead of this atrocious attack. Other things I took away from the president's remarks, that investigators are still looking for any connections, any co-conspirators there, Major. We heard from law enforcement today that made it seem as though they felt this suspect had not acted alone. We await more details, more evidence of why it is they know that. He had said there that he directed the Attorney General, the FBI director, the Secretary of Homeland Security, the NCTC director, to work intensely on this to create a full investigation, in part because so many Americans are concerned right now, to offer a sense of security and satisfaction to the American people. At this point, you mentioned the explosion of the Cybertruck. We know that one individual was inside the Cybertruck, several others suffering minor injuries. No indication from federal law enforcement sources I've spoken to of a connection, but given the timing of this, and by the way, that it seems that both of these vehicles were rented in sort of premeditated acts independently as of this point, looking into possible connections, and officials in Las Vegas also taking all possible precautions, sweeping the streets there, a heightened law enforcement presence on the ground.
One confirmed fatality in the Las Vegas Cybertruck explosion. I will go now to the North Lawn of the White House. CBS News correspondent Scott MacFarlane. The president also noted, Scott, and I'm sure that this was something you paid attention to as well as I, that the intelligence community is in on this, joining the FBI, suggesting that this is not just a domestic matter, it is an international matter that the president wants his team to investigate to the fullest. And he said he would report to the country as soon as information can be confirmed. January this month will have many high-profile events here in the nation's capital. The attack in New Orleans will clearly underscore the preparations and the level of heightened security in that regard.
It didn't happen in a vacuum, did it, Major? It happens in the final days of the Biden administration. These remarks tonight from Camp David, and the president didn't just say, he emphasized, don't jump to conclusions. The investigation's ongoing, and we know from our CBS News reporting here at the White House, the president was briefed quite early this morning by the CIA, the FBI, national security officials, and here in Washington, D.C. tonight. The D.C. Metropolitan Police tell CBS News there is a more visible presence they have now, effective immediately, and these major events are coming here in Washington. Run down the list. January 6th, the electoral count is certified. That has been designated a national security special event due to what happened 4 years ago. January 7th through the 9th, President Carter lies in state at the U.S. Capitol. Then, of course, January 20th, another one of those national security special events, the inauguration of President-elect Trump. There are going to be enormous security perimeters, blockades, checkpoints based on those being huge events, but also, Major, Cities around the country likely reconfiguring or reimagining their security near heavy pedestrian areas.
Scott MacFarlane, the North Lawn of the White House. It's also worth noting that the Sugar Bowl was supposed to kick off tonight, 7:45 local time in New Orleans. It has been postponed, that kickoff, until 4 p.m. tomorrow. New Orleans will turn its attention to that, plus Mardi Gras and a Super Bowl. But as the president noted, New Orleans is grieving, and the president said he grieves with that great American city. Our coverage will continue on CBS News 24/7, your local news. And for some of you, you will turn to see the CBS Evening News. This has been a CBS News special report from Washington. I'm Major Garrett. Good evening.